It's like perfect timing. She's watching. All right, welcome everyone. Everyone's here. Normally I would introduce myself, but everyone here knows who I am, and I know most of you. So today we are happy to have Bari Ziperstein with us here from Los Angeles. So I'll read you a little bit of a bio, and then we'll start from there. So Bari Ziperstein is an artist based in Los Angeles, California. Working in mixed media sculpture, Ziperstein's primary focus is in ceramics. Her plural and fluid practice includes discrete objects, large-scale installations, site-specific public projects, and her line of functional ceramics, BZIPPY. What's interesting here is that Bari has two bios, which we'll get into a little bit. One related to her practice as an artist, and one related to her entrepreneurship and design practice. In her practice as an artist, Bari has shown and completed solo exhibitions in such venues and galleries as Charles Moffat Gallery in New York, where she's represented, Meyer Gallery, and most recently, Weilmater in Los Angeles. Additional venues include the Craft Contemporary, the American Museum of Ceramic Art, Jeffrey Deitch, and the Museum of Art, Architecture, and Design at the University of California, Santa Barbara, just to name a few. So I would encourage you all to go to her website and also look at the related writings and articles based around her work. Also, second bio. Over the past decade, Bari Ziperstein's design company, BZIPPY, has produced both intimately sized and architecturally scaled ceramic vases, vessels, lamps, and furniture, often made in limited editions. The studio now focuses on several categories of creative output, including BZIPPY and a line of more collectible design, BZ Collectible Design. Bari's collectible design is represented by the Future Perfect, and the BZIPPY line is carried throughout the world, I would say. I think that's accurate. Currently, BZIPPY occupies a 9,000 square foot studio in Los Angeles with 16 full-time employees. We have thoroughly enjoyed having Bari here with us these past few days in the studio, and we are all, and I'm very excited, to hear how all of this work gets balanced, and how her work, through a dual lens of art and design, can inform one another, generating new pathways in the ceramic process. So please help me welcome Bari Ziperstein.
No pressure. I've probably met most of you throughout the week, so thank you so much for having me. Ian and Mark, you've been amazing all week in all our emails. So Ian did a great job of explaining our studio as a whole, so I'll just dive right into the work itself. It's kind of going to be a split lecture between the artwork and then the design line. And then a lot of you have talked about wanting some like practical things about running a company. So I have some fun spreadsheets to show you, which is always fun. So, but depending on what company I'm in, meaning like if I'm in an art context, I would call myself an artist who also has a design line. But if I'm in the design context, I would say I'm a CEO and creative director who's also an artist. So it's really interesting, depending on who I'm in front of, how I speak about myself, which is always a difficult balance to ride. This is my studio. So for the first time in 20 years, I actually have a studio within my studio. Before that, that's private, shall I say. The studio before that, it was about 3,000 square feet, and I did not have privacy at all. So this actually has walls and a door, and it doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling because the ceiling is really high, but at least it's a desk with some special objects that I love and my glaze wall and all this stuff. So this is a place for me to not only make new design work, but also to make some artwork as well. The studio is really fluid in terms of what I produce, and we'll go from there. But I'm gonna show you this video. This will be a really great overview of, let's say, the layout of the studio and what we do in terms of being a designer. So. Clay keeps you on your toes, and testing the clay to its limits
It's super, super exciting. My name is Bari Ziperstein. I am CEO and creative director of Bari Ziperstein Studio. The studio was founded in 2008 and is currently 9,000 square feet. We actually fabricate and fire and ship everything in-house. And the way we build here is unique. We're using rudimentary shapes to create larger scale pieces that kind of defy what people expect. Not only tabletop wares, but inventive, large scale pieces. I'm very influenced by the built environment itself. In LA, I'm passing by different types of architecture, freeways, communication towers. I'm constantly taking out shapes within these elements that can be built into side tables and planters. The process really starts with me alone in my studio with my sketchbook. And I think about what is missing in our lineup of works. How is it different than anything else that we produce already? It is absolutely important for us as a studio to constantly innovate, from a tool that we need, to a kiln process, to a design process. And the thoughtfulness that goes into the engineering is the same kind of thoughtfulness that we put into our inward-facing operations. I really wanted to start BZIPPY as a way to circumvent the idea of what a working artist can do and how to make a living. Because I didn't have much stability early on in my career, it was really, really important to me to build that not only for myself and my family, but also for the 12 full-time artisans within my studio. My biggest point of pride with the studio has to be our team, and that I found a way to be an artist who's also an entrepreneur.
So I hope that really gives you a sense of the scale of the studio. This was, a lot of times we have to submit videos and other information for grants or for prizes. And the application was like, just take your iPhone and make a video. And I was like, I'm not gonna take my iPhone and make a video. That's LA, I'm gonna hire a production crew and I'm gonna have a budget of $10,000. I'm gonna make this freaking 2-minute video. You know, we can use that footage in perpetuity. So like, it's a great investment for marketing as well. But I hope that gives you a sense of the studio. So obviously that's not how I started my career in a 9,000 square foot studio, but I'm just gonna show you where we're at now and then I'll go backwards. I hope that helps. So this is our production area where we fabricate, and Ian, you can see those nice filters up there. One of the biggest things about moving studios is my team really requested better health and safety. You know, we didn't have enough breakers for the other studio to get any kind of air filters. So this is a huge endeavor to invest in those kinds of things and get new air conditioners and HEPA filters and all those kinds of things. This is one of our workers, Lily. She's making, you saw her in the video multiple times. That's her hands working on a side table. The Fabricators, oh, here they are. Love them. This is just a small amount of us at my opening at Velmeter, but they only make production work and collectible design. They actually do not make the artwork. So if that helps you to understand like the 16 people, that also involves like the shipping department, the prefabrication department, admin people. So it's in total 16 people. So you can see here we are micro manufacturing. You can see our giant Bailey slab rollers. And we use hump molds. We get them fabricated, or we, use bisque molds to make a lot of our work as well. We do not use a wheel. It is all hand building using slabs. Rarely any coil building. We store, the prefabrication department works 2 weeks ahead of the fabrication department, and they just have to like go over and get their parts for what they have to work on that day. This is our kiln room. You can see that is not a fake backdrop with the mountains there. That is Glendale. That's the Verdugo Mountains, which is like such a beautiful view in Los Angeles. So we also have like a pergola outside where the team can sit out there, 365 days a year to have lunch and stuff. So those kind of accessories was really important for me to give the team like this health and safety stuff. We are actually running out of kiln space. We do need more kilns. So, and they're all scut and they're electrical kilns. This is our front of house. What I showed you before is our back of house. This is what clients come in if they come into our studio through the front. This is our break room and kitchen, and also like communal table. So this is where the team takes their breaks. This was originally an office that we busted out the walls. We did hire an interior design team to come in and work with us. There actually also was not a kitchen. So we built the kitchen out. We did do the tiles for this project. And then see those tiny little handles? That's my son, and I'm making them. So he often comes to the studio on a Sunday, and his name is Lawrence. He's 7, and we'll make these little pinch pots. And there he is trying to decide what kind of face he wants on that one. Because on the handles, it's all these little green faces all over it. So I really love incorporating items for my son as well. This is another view of the hallway down to the break room. We have this beautiful calico wallpaper, which is a company out of New York. And then we made the sconces as well. So we've never made sconces before. It's kind of hard to see in the dark here, but they've got this beautiful crystalline green glaze on them as well. This is a section of my office. So my son, that's his desk. He really wanted a space in my studio so he can, when he does come, that he can claim a space himself. So that was really, really important. Some of the objects that I really, really value, we collect a lot of art at the studio as a way to, we take our profits and we actually give scholarships for different art organizations and teaching organizations, but we also purchase artwork at the studio. So there's this amazing potter in LA called Wayne Perry. We have Joanna Powell up here, my son's stuff, and it's just, and some painters and some people from New Zealand as well. This is our sales office, or one portion of our sales office. This is where our director sits. And it's a way to bring in clients. When I say clients, I'm not talking about art clients. I'm talking about design clients to come through this space and to see how we imagine our own work to be viewed in a sort of a setting. It's really important to me to use vintage furniture, everything from like Joe Colombo chairs, working with Herman Miller. These kinds of brands are really essential for me. My dad was a collector of sorts. I grew up outside of Chicago, and he collected vintage furniture, and we'd travel all over the country just for him to get a Haywood Wakefield bedroom set or a Bakelite radio, or he was really dapper, and he wore like two-tone vintage shirts or like shoes, and he was just like a very specific type of person. And so this kind of use of color, like in his house, he had a Pepto-Bismol pink TV room, and just his sense of color, and he, got 50s fabric and would, upholster the couch and have a matching drapes. He was just very specific, and I think I got definitely that sense of color from him. This is our other side of our sales office. And this beautiful chairs, vintage chairs, and then our work featured in the space as well. So this is a great way for us to show our work as well. In our old space, we did not have this. And I can't tell you how helpful it is to have clients come to the studio. It is just like it sells itself. Like when clients come in and they see our work, they can envision it in their own home as well. This is on the other side of the sales office as well. It's a pretty large sales office. It has beautiful Joe Colombo lamp and chairs, and then you have this beautiful table, custom table by Waka Waka, who's this amazing Japanese furniture maker, mainly uses plywood out of Los Angeles. And I asked for a custom chocolate brown table. Brown is my favorite color. So we often use our seconds in our own studio as well. This is part of my office as well. That's my son's little vase there, one of his vases, and this features a new collection that we're actually going to debut at ICFF coming up in May, which is the International Contemporary Furniture Fair in New York. We also have a presentation space at the studio where we can show anything from a new series of design work, or I will have a series of artworks for galleries to see as well. We built out the space. We originally got it in July of last year, and it took till October to move in. And think about downtime for production. That was just not a fun. We had to prepare for those kinds of things. We're still actually catching up from that kind of downtime. So that's a sense of the studio, of the scale of it, about the different departments that are within it. There are leads in every department. Everyone has a contract. Everyone has health care and sick time and all those kinds of things you would imagine that a normal business would have. We have an HR department. So within that, I'm able to make my artwork because the scale of the studio allows me to make the scale of my artwork. I don't have enough art shows, or neither do I want to make art every day, that it allows me to use like basically a manufacturing facility to make my own work. I built that as a way to offset, to not have to teach. So I taught for a very long time, but I got one order from a major retailer that was double the price of one semester of teaching, and I was like, okay, writing on the wall. So sometimes you just have to like make those decisions. They're not actually made for you, it's presented to you. So that was in, my last teaching gig was in 2014. So now I'm going to go into the artwork itself. I'm going to go back into the Wayback Time Machine in 2017, where I am, imagine this, I'm in a 1,000 square foot studio that I split with another sculptor that was like moldy ceiling. I'd been there for 15 years, and I just left a gallery. I was like, I don't want to show with you anymore. And I had no gallery in Los Angeles. And then this curator from this museum came, and she's like, oh, you have work ready. Let's have a show. So you never know. One door opens, closes, how that goes. But at the same time, this is at UC Santa Barbara, which is Ian's alma mater. And they have an amazing art and architecture museum. And I had this beautiful space. And at the time, I was researching a lot of work. So let me just give you political context. This is 2017, January 2017, right? Who is elected president on January 8th? Trump. Okay, so all this work that is being developed like 6 to 8 months before that is all dealing with propaganda from Russia. Okay, so anyone Russian here? Like speak, read Russian? Okay. Just wanted, if you needed to help me translate. But so there's a museum in Los Angeles called the Vende, and they have an archive of Cold War material, anything from design magazines to posters, as you can see here, to busts of Stalin, to fabrics, to clothing. It's an incredible archive, and it's mainly focused on Germany, Russia, and Ukraine. I was invited to go to that museum and look at their pottery, because it's a lot of production pottery. Not interested in the pottery. I saw it. But I was like, what kind of like other material do you have? And so I found these posters, and that is what kind of landed me in a really interesting place. These posters are, they're kind of self-explanatory. And I was fascinated with them for several reasons. The fashion. Okay, the fashion is like the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. Also, like the meaning of some of these posters as well, and like what were if the government commissioned this, what was the reason for it, and what was the message, and how were they distributed? So at the same time, I found this set. So this is an actual diagram from the 60s and 70s and 80s, where in Russia, if you had a trade show, you would get this kit, okay? You'd get a booklet along with this entire kit. And then this is a diagram about how to set up a propaganda set. Literally, it came with the propaganda posters. It came with the metal sheeting. It came with everything. And I was like, there is a set for propaganda. How do I make art about this? So from there is where the show came about. So I remade the set, but instead of obviously having propaganda posters in it, I had images of pattern and decoration that had to deal with the time period in which that was happening. So this is the solo museum show, my first solo museum show in 2017, a series of, as I called them at the time, propaganda pots, and a series of reconfigured propaganda sets. Everything just technically is hand-built. No wheel is either forms on hump molds or shipping tubes and whatnot. And this is an exact one-to-one as best as I could imagine, because there's no dimensions on the set itself as to the set that you would get if you were to go into a trade show, in the front of the trade show. So instead of having posters, I had images of women breastfeeding, and then I had images of women drinking, which were direct images from all these propaganda posters. This is it in my old studio before. These are like parts sitting around, just to show you a little bit behind the scenes. I was at the time really trying to think about how flat ceramics can be sculptural, and having these apparatuses to hang them into as well. So this is just to show you a little bit about how the leather work was made. So I have worked with leather in the past a lot. Now it's not something that I do myself. I contract out to work with a leather crafter as well. It's a giant embossment of chainmail. And these kind of flat slabs, I was very interested in them. And this is an exact replica of one of the sets that had posters going around the whole thing. The firing process obviously is really tricky. Do I fire them flat? Do I fire them upright? So it's like constant. I know all you guys fire in so many different ways. And then to show just some textiles of where the source material comes from. These are some of the propaganda pots. Now, I was very interested in these pots being flat, but also being dimensional. The flatness is very, very important to me. Not only does it reference the initial imagery that you would get from the poster itself, but it also, to me, is a sense of drawing. It's very important that there's this play between the 3D and the 2D. Something that you might not ever see this lady come out to be an actual object, to sort of extract them from their original source material and put them in context or in conversation with other pieces, other posters. On a technical level, a lot of these are terracotta and just low fired and drawn on top of. They are, there's a point of drawing in these pieces that are really, really important to me. At the time, I have a painting undergrad degree, so sometimes I feel like I'm just actually making surfaces to paint on in the end, because I really enjoy painting itself. So I have the poster in front of me, and I'm freehand drawing it. There's no tricks here about, projecting or anything. And I like the elongation of things. I like when things get strange, when things cut off and you can't see, like in this one, you can't see, there's like fractures of the face, all that stuff. From that series, I had a solo show at Meyer Gallery in 2018 where I asked to build this custom pedestal. And the thing about the pedestal is you can go down the aisle, but there's no exit. So you're forced to actually come back around if you go down the center. And at this time, I was really researching propaganda posters dealing with alcoholism in Russia. And you guys might ask, why Russia? That is my diaspora, is Ukrainian, Yugoslavian, Russia, and Poland. So learning about my own culture and how they're depicting women was like very, very important to me. Now, this is a time period when Trump is elected, when there's a lot of Russian investigation happening, in the world in 2018. Again, continuing the series to deal with the flatness of the space, but also have different depictions of these characters sitting next to each other. You have a joyous character playing guitar next to almost looking like a miserable person smoking a cigarette. Now, those two people next to each other is like, it's its own band of sorts, these people. In the front of the gallery, I was able to loan some original propaganda posters from the Wende to the gallery, which is so amazing to have this these original posters in the exhibition. That is actually a kegerator in the front. Does anyone know what a kegerator is? Yeah, you can put beer in it. It's a ceramic kegerator, so you put a keg in it. My husband brews beer, and so it's actually functional. So in the gallery itself, Meyer Gallery, he's German, and so we made Hefeweizen, and it's also my favorite beer. And so during the opening, people had to like drink out of this lady's mouth, which is where the tap came out of and stuff like that. So the irony of all those things just make me so happy. And this is the original propaganda poster in which this kegerator came from. Obviously changing the imagery on the flags to be more about pattern and decoration. This at the time was our Kiln Room. You can see some of the work that is in bisque. And I'm just gonna show you a series of white background images from the exhibition itself. So there's always gonna be a translation for me between the actual poster and then what is actually made. This poster, the woman on the left is saying to the woman on the right, like, I made this amount in one night, you make that in a week, and so you have two, quote unquote, working women, right? Working women. And the judgment that they're both placing on each other is fascinating to me. And who commissioned this image? It's just so many questions. This idea of women against women is also really problematic messaging for obvious reasons. So the fragmentation of the heads, some of the heads are coming off as well, is very important. This original image is this one, and I forgot the name of what it says. I think it says like youth. It's all about youth joining the movement. This is the last piece I made of this series. It's tiny mothers holding their babies crying in tiny little windows in tiny little houses. At the time, that's exactly how I felt as a mother, trapped in a pot, And a lot of these images come directly from the posters, as you can see, but it's about their interpretation and their drawing style that goes on to them, and the carving and the relief. This is the bad mom. She's a bad mom. She's got a kid at her breast. She's got a kid pulling her, and all she wants is a drink, She's just like, I need a drink. And she's got this drink, and she's drinking, and, the faces are fragmented, and they're flat, and they come directly from images from the poster. That's how stuffed our oval kiln was to fit all the work inside. I think of some of these as sort of like trophies of times. The tops come off often, and you could like hide things inside. So that's also an interesting thing. I'm not an illustrator by trade or anything. It just comes really naturally, and that process of translating the cartoon is really interesting. And that's the original. This image says like, you have a boyfriend, but I don't have a boyfriend, and you should get a boyfriend, or something like that. So again, this idea of women against women, I'm fascinated by why that needs to be a propaganda poster. I'm not here to answer the question about why. I'm interested in taking these historical images and reinterpreting them into our current time. This is kind of like a street scene. So I'll take tiny sections of this poster and then make it on a larger scale or have different, I'll make the parts and then cut them out and glue them on in different ways. So I took a bit of a break between, I guess that's, solo show once a year is plenty of time. But you have to remember, while I'm making all these shows, what else do you think I'm doing? I'm trying to run a whole studio. I am now at this point full-time in the studio. I'm now in a 3,500 square foot studio. And at the time when we're stopping to, I have to have my team make my work with me because I don't have the capacity to make all this work by myself at this time. So here's a portion of the second studio I was in, and this is the result of a solo show at Charles Moffat Gallery in New York. And it's a series, again, of propaganda pots, but it's more focused on the pattern and decoration of that time period and some of the subliminal messages within these patterns that were supposed to be to decorate your house. And I brought the work, Charlie, the gallerist, really wanted to bring the sculptural work that was in the UCSB show to the gallery to show the audience that I was not just a tabletop artist, but that I have an expansive practice, which is quite a risk for him to do because to sell a piece at this scale is very, very difficult. And it did not sell. We did not expect it to sell. It was more for a curatorial context. I did ask for this custom pedestal as well. He had a budget for something like that, and that's something we planned out. And again, this is a reinterpretation of the show at UCSB, just this section. If I didn't mention this before, you can see that the patterns on the left and right ones are the same pattern, just in a different colorway. And in the research I did at the Wende, they had a lot of those original drawings from the artists in gouache in multiple colorways. And I was fascinated by the fact that, when we think about choice of interior design, we think about, it really depends on your socioeconomic level. So you can go to IKEA and you can be like, great, I have these amount of choices. But, then you go to Design Within Reach and you're like, oh, I have these amount of choices. And then you keep going and you have all these choices. But at the time in Russia, these were their choices, these 4 choices. The choices are much limited, but they didn't know that they had any more choices. They just thought these were the choices because of how restricted media and otherwise and commerce and importing was. So I'm really interested in that idea as well about how goods get moved and passed through our economy. Again, it's a series of sgraffito, hand painting, some is terracotta, some is cone 6, the pleasure of the painting. There's some walnut bases to elevate some of the pieces. They are not based on a historical silhouette, but I know the vessel is very loaded itself, so how can it not have that historical context with it as well? And you can see here, these are Russian workers and army personnel harvesting cotton. And so patterns like this, these were actually fabrics that you were to upholster your couch with. Same with this. And so what is that message, that subliminal message that comes through when you're, there's a farm worker in here harvesting wheat. There's a lot of fabrics in their collection on sports. These are swimmers. And I think that's about achieving this ideal. And so this was the last pot I made in the series. Usually the last piece I make definitely leads to the next series as well. And so this idea of having secrets within them or parts where the viewer can open them and find another pattern. So the underneath pattern of the piece on the left is also yellow as well, the same kind of pattern. And then so many patterns and fabrics about industry. I mean, would you want a gear bedspread? I don't know. What does that mean? So it's just interesting how taste has changed. This is the image from the poster. I wanted to include it as well. This is your ideal Russian woman with her shmata on her head and she's got the carnations or the flowers of the people, and she's has an offering of sorts. This actually lifts up, like the head actually comes off, and it's almost like cookie jars in a sense. My dad collected cookie jars, and when he passed over 25 years ago, I got his collection. So that's how I learned about ceramics, besides like knowing what a sink was and a toilet. His cookie jar collection has been extremely informative to me, and I don't have any out at the house. They're in storage, but how can they not be influential in that kind of way? These are micro little protesters protesting abstraction or something ridiculous, and that's the back of the piece as well. And then you have themes here where you have workers going to the factory, and you can see the cogs literally of the gears going, and then you see the woman in the stereotypical role of like comforting the man as he comes home from work and feeding him and all this bullshit. So from there, I took a bit of a break from making pots, and I made a series of flat works. So instead of sketching in my sketchbook and just drawing with color pencil or not, I will take slabs of clay and just start carving patterns into them based on the original patterns from his historical images. So I never make up a pattern per se. It is always based on something historical. Now, I do make up the color palette based on the glazes that I'm using, but I am not making up the imagery. And they're framed in these beautiful walnut frames, and they're like shadows. There's no glass on them. And they're floating in there. There's like a block of wood behind that as well. I think of these as my little swatches of sorts, similar to how that I found the original swatches in the archives. I've always used historical images and archives as a way to mine, bringing that information back into our current time and what does it mean. You can see that there's a lot of cracks in these, which we've been talking a lot about cracks this week. And I didn't mind the crack. This is like PC7. I go over it. It's fine. It just blends right in. So this is 2020. What's happening in 2020? So this public art piece actually went up in December of 2020. So I'll just give you a context for this. This piece was the first piece that the studio made as we came back from being shut for 3 months. So the studio actually had to close for 3 to 4 months. We actually had to let every person go except for our sales team because they were already working remotely. We are considered manufacturing in Los Angeles, and at the time, the mayor and the governor closed all manufacturing that was not essential, as I'm sure you heard about if you weren't like in food or medical processing. So we actually had to close, and I had to remember how to make all the pieces that I designed again, okay? So we do have manuals for everything we make, but there's nothing more humbling than coming back. I was mainly in the office for a few years. I didn't make production. And so to come back and remember how to make my own work after being away from it for so long was, let's just say, very humbling. And my son would be at the studio almost every day. This is the summer. He's not in school, kindergarten, and it was a trip. Let's just say that. So this is the piece we made. This was in commission at University of California, Riverside. This is a probably like 9 feet tall public sculpture made in sections, is permanent on the campus. And there's a series of other artists who are also in this series with Anna Suhoy and Brenda Youngblood as well, LA-based artists. I taught out here for a long time, so it was really special to have the work here as well. And these are giant. These are 25 inches tall by 28 inches wide. They fit in the whole oval kiln. They're all hand carved, you'll see. So let me show you this video. You see, this is when we're not even wearing proper masks, really. We're doing cloth masks. So So you can see here that we use a yoga ball or an exercise ball as a hump mold. We'll use anything we can get our hands on to not have to coil build in the studio. It is much easier for our team. They're much more trained in slab construction. And then the yoga balls come with that lovely donut at the bottom. And you just like literally it's just perfect. It's a perfect stand. And then you use a trash can to like put the ball in and then just put the clay over. It's all meant to be, you know. You can use anything as a hump mold. So these are we call them the balls. Prior to me carving on them, we had to work with an engineer because we had to pour a concrete slab, and the rod that goes through it in sections goes down like 10 feet. So these connectors you see with the notches in them were very specific, because if I put them in the wrong area or didn't have them go through perfectly because it's on the other side, you know, it could ruin everything. So we built them upright and then sliced them in half. So you can see two of our workers at the time working in tandem on them as well. So this is our old studio. And the first time you lifted it up, we're like, oh my God. And so I see these as, again, a surface to draw on, a surface to communicate on. This was at the time the largest piece I had worked on. This is the original pattern in which this series came from, and you can see the carving aspect that's happening on these pieces in like leather hard stage. And there's me hand carving everything. So I'll have the team build these, and then I will be the only one carving and drawing on them. At the time, while we're still kind of shuttering and kind of trying to get back to, I'm talking about the design world, trying to get the team back into the studio, hiring. We were supposed to move in 2020. I almost signed a lease for a larger space, but I didn't. So we were desperate to move, but we couldn't yet because we needed to make sure that the economy and all these things that were happening. So at the time, I think I made like not that many works in 2020, just because it's not where my head was at. But I will show you a series of just like, this is actually a large scale piece. It probably goes up to my waist area. These were works that were shown in 2020 or I guess January of 2021 at Nina Johnson Gallery in Miami. And this is, again, another way for me to exercise my interest in pattern and decoration and find these forms. A lot of these forms are offcuts from the big vessel or the big totem piece. So we save a lot of our cutoffs, and then I'll make a smaller piece based on that as well. This is some work from a recent exhibition called, Clay Pop? And at Jeffrey Deitch, and this is a series of large-scale works that I made for that show. And at the time, it was really important for me to combine these kinds of patterns. I think that first started in that one vessel that was yellow on the inside. So it's sort of like clashing of taste and what that means at the same time. This is in 2021 in the summer, when I actually had a little bit of time to make some work that was just tabletop works. And again, this idea of the clashing of the patterns. These, I was really looking at vessels and perfume bottles as a way to think about things setting inside of things as well. And the fabrics for this is like an electrical to show energy. And then you have some very floral-based work. This is my latest exhibition that just closed a couple weeks ago. This is at a gallery in Los Angeles called Valmeter. She has been around for 20 years, and this is her latest space. She has almost the full ground level of a very large warehouse, and then she has some other spaces called garden spaces. And I was in, this is about 1,000 square feet, and it was just enough pressure because if I was in maybe 2,000 square feet, it would take me years to make that scale work. So this show is called Patterns for Models. Now, this show was conceived in 2021, mainly like the summer till January of this year. This is pre-Russia invading Ukraine, because all these buildings that these works are based on are based in Ukraine and Russia. So the work had a different, let's just say, take from the audience once they learned more about the titling and whatnot about the work. And I'm not afraid of politics and having political content in the work. That's not what I'm afraid of. I just want to make sure, as the political climate changes, that I'm sensitive to the work also having to have a change of meaning as well, and to not stick to that. So that's when I make political work, it's especially if it's about an area that is hot, as we say, you have to be open to that kind of criticism. So these are a series of 4 sculptures. Originally, I was just going to use white pedestals, but then I decided to make the pedestals. No problem. So this is a piece that's made in 4 sections. It is a beautiful photography. This goes out into her garden space, and it all slots together. The image on the left, the sculpture on the left is actually a Kiev crematory. I don't know the status of its at this time, but it's this beautiful crematory, and this is the back of it. And it was originally, I'll show you the original images. So this is the original architecture. This was originally built just after World War II as a way to talk about crematories that were actually not about the Holocaust. And the architecture was really important to not emphasize of what it was. Originally, there was, on the facade of it, there was a ton of pattern and decoration on it. But at the time, even before it opened, the political climate, they whitewashed it over. So as you can imagine, that happens. So for me, it was really important to reinsert that pattern back onto this building itself, and to obviously have it be more surreal and very strange in its architectural nature. It is, I'm going to show you a series of failures and triumphs in the kiln, because I'm sure you all want to see stuff like that. So to put this in the kiln, we obviously have to take apart the entire kiln to put this giant piece in. And okay, this is like the biggest failure. Okay, you see how it's like, I'm like, okay, the stomach of this is gonna not fall because we have the stacks and the clay is going, and I'm gonna look at all those patches. Do you see all those patches on there? Oh my God, so many patches. Paper clay, paper clay, paper clay. And then we have the bricks on the top so it doesn't like collapse. It's just a whole thing. Guess what? That didn't even matter. The butt of this was like 1/4 of an inch too big. And like, it just, the rings wouldn't fit back on. And I was like, God damn it. So we tried to patch and patch and patch, and I measured wrong. So that's what happens, and I'm the only one making this work. I don't have like my lead of engineering at my team being like, okay, Bari, don't forget, it's just me. So that is just like such a nightmare. So, but it happens. Anyways, I had to remake that piece, and I made it into 2 sections, and then the top one blew up. So then I had to make that walnut top. So like these things happen, right? You make a piece in a short amount of time because you have a show. Guess what? Don't leave like 3 months to make a sculpture show. And this is my first time stacking it, because you can't stack greenware at this scale. There's no way. So you have to like a lot of measuring, a lot of templates, leaving wiggle room between pieces. So that's just a sense of before it was glazed itself. This is just to see the scale of this piece in the studio and some of the top parts. There are cracking on this, but the cracking on this does not bother me at all. And at the time, this is like in November, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to paint all this. Wait, I just built it, and I have to paint all this. Like, I can't paint all this myself. And I was like, oh God. And so because I have the design line, and we have nice cash flow, I was able to immediately hire 2 painters to glaze these works for me for like 3 months until the show opened, literally. And we had to push back the show by a week because the detail, like how many layers of glaze do you guys, it's like 3 layers, 4 layers of glaze to get this so intricate, and the labor involved in that is very important to me. This is some of the original patterning on the piece itself. To go from, I just want to say that, and that these, and you can see my team. That's Nacho. I've talked about him throughout the week here. Nacho is in the salmon sweatshirt with the ponytail. He's our lead. And then we have Diego. He's also one of our great fabricators, and Jacob. He's our shipping and receiving photography guy. And you know, luckily we have a combination of very strong workers that can really help. You know, lift this stuff. I'm not tall, as you know, and so I need tall people to like get that last lift, that last piece on top. So, okay, this is a great video. This is all my ladies from my team. No problem. No problem. Anybody want a top loader? No. Ian's like, no top loaders. But that's the team. They're just so pleased. And to get those pieces into the kiln is quite a journey. This is me in December 2021, like, I don't know, like 2:30 in the morning. My family's camping. I've stayed behind to finish the show. You can see the works in several series of dryness. The piece all to the left has been bisqued. The works all the way in the front are just being built and like letting itself dry. You can see that there's paper between the layers, and I've just started carving everything. So, and you can see a giant cookie being laid out to fire once the team comes back from Christmas break. So at this time, I'm just preparing for everything to be ready for them to fire on like January 2nd, that Monday. So, because I cannot load this stuff myself. This is another sculpture that was in the show. This piece is called Corporate Abandonment. This is actually a building in Alhambra, California. It's an old Sears building. And again, I was going to just have a white pedestal until I decided to, you know, make the pedestal myself and have a lovely challenge. This is how I dry this piece. You know, this is how I dry this piece. I don't know how to say it any other way. There's no manual per se of how, if you're trying to invent something or have a cantilever, and you just use what you have around you. I mean, we love foam and blue tape, you know. So that's the bottom half of this sculpture, right? It comes in 2 sections and it's wrapped in plastic. And I just had to take this picture because I feel like it's really important to see how the apparatuses and the armatures that sculptors use and ceramic people use in order to make their work. That's the original building itself. You can see that we remade the base out of walnut as well. I was talking about yesterday where like the piece split apart and there's like this tooth. That's actually epoxy, like the whole piece split apart. Now this piece really changed its meaning, and the piece also cracked, and we did a luster. Or sorry, not a luster, we did a silver leaf inside. But the piece really changed as the war became more prevalent because the original imagery on the top portion of the building is actually from a doily. And the doily was imagery around the border, it just had warplanes. Okay, so a doily of warplanes. Let's just think about that as just like an object to sell. But as the war went on, it became, and the devastation that was happening in Ukraine, it became very dark, this piece, because it's a building with bullet holes in it, and there's there's ships flying around. Planes flying around. So it became, that's what I'm talking about when the work changes, when you, just because of the time period, and of literal, the time period that's happening in the piece, in the world. Just showing you some more details of the hand-built process. Some of these parts are extruded, but most of it is just slab construction. When I make this work, it is typically drawn out in sections, and then I provide a cut list to my team. my prefabricators, and they roll out the slabs and the thickness that I need, and then I'll make the paper templates and start to build from there. So this is also another piece that is based on architecture, and you could see these are made in sections. This is blimps. That was, again, fabric meant to be in your home. Coupled with flowers that have hidden blimps within them. I really want to show you my son. So this is in December of 2021, and he's 7. If he could just be naked in the studio, just like, but I'm like, okay, just wear some pants and some shoes. Okay. So it's amazing how much he knows now. He knows how to slip and score. He knows how to coil. This is him. This is Lawrence, and he's putting that coil on that piece to be able to put that top slab on and stuff. So he knows what he's doing, and it is such a pleasure to have him in the studio, especially with no masks, because no one is around at that time. And that's the scale of the work itself. So between me trying to get work done, he is asking me to feed him. So like, this is just like him playing, you know? So imagine what kind of kid he's gonna be, like, or adult, sorry, as an adult, like being like, these are the shapes. I mean, Ian, your daughter as well, who they are going to be or not be interested in art at all. This is how we fire the work on cookies that are specific to the shape of the piece, and we have that triangle on the top that slots into the other piece. We have to take apart the oval kilns in order to get these in perfectly. These are the most recent work as well. These are some flat work. So I've really incorporated that into my practice more. Instead of just having them be tests on the side, I now do make wall-based ceramic work that is more intentional. So I built this whole frame and apparatuses out of ceramic now. It's kind of warped in the image, but it is flat. And this idea of combining different textiles has really been really exciting for me. This is where I can experiment with new glazes and new techniques of drawing as well. I'm a lot more easier on myself when strange things happen with these. Like, this was originally not supposed to be silver leafed. It's just the glaze failed, and so we just went to town on that. So these things happen. The integration of the hanging apparatus is really important. There's an integral cleat on the back, so it's flush to the wall, and we've drilled beautiful screws that from the top that so you can't necessarily see the cleat. I really want it to be flush on the wall to be. So these are just a series of these as well. So that is my art practice. Lecture number 2. You ready? Okay, so that is my art practice up to this point. And, you know, parallel to this, I am building my design career. And we're moving studios, we're hiring, you know, even in the video it said we had 13 people. We now have 16 just from that video. So this is our branding for our company itself. And that looks really brown, but it's actually like a salmon color. We have branding. We have 2 different Instagrams. We have graphic designers. Everything you can think of for like a company that sells objects. Not to say that artists don't sell objects, but you think it's less commercial. So during COVID, we were unable to shoot our work in situ, which is really important when we to sell our work, to show our clients what we make. So we hired an amazing digital artist to make a series of renderings for us. And this is actually a digital rendering we gave her a series of, should we say, like, idea. We're like, we want a hotel lobby because it's like aspirational. That's the kind of client we want. We wanted a hotel lobby with 50 of our side tables in it. But how do we get that gig? Well, we have to show the hotels that we have done that before. And without doing that, you have to do it in a rendering of sorts. And there's amazing artists out here. This is a digital rendering. It's just like incredible. Excuse me why. But this is also a digital rendering to get clients, interior designers that want to place our work, not just one piece, but a series of pieces as an environment is really important to us as well. We're not going to fly to Greece to have this kind of light. So again, this is another digital rendering, and also something like this as well. This is not a digital rendering. This is from the other day. This is our kiln. This is our ledge side table. Look at all those cracked cookies. We love cracked cookies. It means they took the shock, but not the work itself. So it's awesome. So everything we make right now is made to order. Everything we make is sold already. We are on a 3 to 4 month lead time, which is ridiculous. This is what the interior design world calls supply chain, trying to have a hard time hiring employees. It's just like really, really, really slow. Just so you have an understanding of how stuff like this is made, for the team itself, we make renderings of all of our pieces, and we make expanded views of how something is built. So for me, in order for me to be sovereign from the team, I need to have every single thing documented of how things are built. So I'm not on the fabrication floor anymore. I am in my studio, or I'm doing paperwork or doing entrepreneurial things. We have a lead in this department and people that do these renderings for us in-house that teach the team how to build it. Not only do they have to look at the schematics, but they have an opportunity to build the piece and to see the gap between the schematics and what they're building. There might be changes to this, how we're building things as well. This is what we call the planter party. We have an in-house photographer as well for all our product photography. That is really, really important for us. We want to make sure that the gap between what the client sees and what they receive is very, very slim. Yes, there is things that happen in the kiln and color-wise, but this is for one client in Florida. To get this kind of order is really special for us, because to see our work all in situ in these color palettes is like really kind of a great choice. Most people do not order colors in this way, just a heads up. This is like a very special client. This is a client in Canada. You can see our best-selling cloud side table in green. Most of our clients are interior designers. This is some of our tabletop wear. This is a shoot from Vogue. You can see how they style some of our work. I'd say 90% of our sales are from interior designers, and the other half or portion of it is from wholesale. Wholesale means it goes to stores. This is some of our team working on across the board, all for the same pieces. So a lot of times we do that as a way for each team member to learn the piece, because we have some team members that have been there for 2 years and other people that have been there for 2 months, because we've grown so fast. So it's really important for that parallelness and that mentorship between the team members. Okay, this is Nacho again, my pride. So this table is about 27 inches wide.
Wow, the bottom looks perfect.
It looks great.
Look at Nacho.
Okay, so Nacho, once a month we have something called Innovation Day. Every Friday, once a month, we have Innovation Day, and it's a way for our team to work on things that are not on the production schedule. And at that time, Nacho was trying to build the biggest table he could build. That was his assignment. And it took him 3 days to build the biggest table he could build without it cracking or slumping. And he did it. And that was him being very proud of himself. And now that piece is officially going to go on our line sheet, because now we know how to make it and we can sell it, and we've made it multiple times. So it's really important within our business to allow time to not just be cog producing work, to find ways and time to be innovative as well. It also really increases morale, as you can imagine, that the team has time to exercise their own brain than just like executing things. So this is an image of a bunch of tables that are about to go into the kiln. This is a classic series of our works, from the hex table to double tier and all these kinds of pieces as well. That is a cloud planter. And then this is the biggest cloud planter we've ever made. Nacho also made this. As you can tell, Mr. Nacho is
is our innovator of sorts. And that palladium, I'll never get sick of that palladium glaze. You can see how we can make smalls and mass and put them into the kiln. And again, Nacho, again, he'll be so happy that I'm speaking about him so much. But we do a lot of innovation in terms of tools. Like, so he is a CNC cutter, and he'll make tools to make it easier for us to cut the necks of things at the same length over and over again instead of having to take the ruler. So we're constantly making these like rudimentary, strange, like miter boxes of sorts for each piece we make. So, and these are some of my other workers. They're flipping a piece because everything is made upside down. And then they are actually flipped to go into the kiln. These are cloud side tables. I mean, and this is a typical view of one shipment, and this is going to Australia. We ship a lot to Australia as well, and then the photo series as well, photo area. I'm going to go on to our collectible design series. So our collectible design series, I'd say the difference between BZIPPY and our collectible design is not only in terms of its name. So Bari Ziperstein is for the collectible design. It is limited edition of 28 only. And the BZIPPY works is uneditioned, so it can be sold wherever. We do have criteria of if we take on a wholesaler and all we've kind of applications to sell our work. But Future Perfect in New York is an amazing gallery. They have 3 locations, San Francisco, LA, and New York, and they exclusively show our collectible design. If we had more capacity in our studio, we would sell collectible design to many more places, but we just cannot make the work fast enough. It takes multiple days to make these pieces, which is actually very long for us. So we're used to making a side table a day at our studio. So this is a view of the current showroom of Future Perfect. They are located in a house in Beverly Hills. So most of their locations are in homes. Actually, it's like an interesting model that they have. You could see in the back is one of Ian and our colleagues, Cody Hoyt, who they also show. And then my side table is next to the couch. And you have Lindsay Adelman on the lamp hanging chandelier. And for them, this work is highly more engineered. So that they have specific glazes that they use that's only for them. And they also have works that are engineered in a very specific way. So although there's like a taxonomy of shapes that you'll see throughout the works, that's the tube because it's extruded. We're almost about through the first series of all the works. So we have to design a whole new series of 28 pieces. We don't have the capacity to make them all at once, but we're gonna, phase them in. And I hope to change up the extruded form and have some more custom dies as well. So that's a chair in the background, an extruded chair that is made from hollow extruded tubes and joined together. And then that planter in the front is ours. That's just from their San Francisco location. The chair, you could sit on, all those things. And that's Jonathan Cross. He's an amazing artist in Joshua Tree and Pasadena. He fires everything in his wood-fired kiln out in the desert. So the idea that these pieces look like they're spinning of sorts, that the tubes look like they're in motion is really, really important to me. And then the piece on the left is mine, that large-scale planter. And then if you don't know the ceramic artist on the right, this table, this is Flores Wubin. He is Amsterdam? No. Yeah. And he is, just look at his Instagram or his website or whatever. He makes his own extruded machine. He's more interested in the machinery itself than the fine. He's not a clay person. He became a clay person only after the fact of wanting to make these objects. These are extruded in one go. So the tabletop is one extrusion. Can you imagine that? And then the legs are also one extrusion as well. He's a very interesting artist. These are the works prior to being glazed in multiple forms. You can see at the top that the first series of works that I made for them, I had to actually make maquettes for Future Perfect. Now they trust me and they're just like, go for it. I'll see a rendering. That's great. These are also some collectible design works that actually went out to Argentina. This is the latest piece that I made for Design Miami. I wanted to obviously challenge myself. How do you make a coffee table out of ceramics with having just an oval kiln? And still using the taxonomy of shapes that I use and thinking about it in sections. So you can also, if you bought this piece, you can also move it into different forms, and it's movable and almost like a puzzle piece of sorts. This is also a piece we made for Design Miami. This is in 2 sections. So the piece on the right has the 3 columns on the right side and vice versa on the left side. So they can be shown in multiple sections. This is in terracotta. Now I'm going to show you, this is called the melting plane, and this is built upside down and built in sections. So each section is built very separately. And this is a drying. I was showing one of the students today about how this piece is drying because we use a lot of apparatuses to have things dry because we want to make sure that the cantilever portion of it doesn't crack, and also to leave enough room for it to have give, to not just crack in half. And this is like a typical rendering that we would give to our team. If you could see where it says the title up there with the mint little piece up there, it says exactly what parts that make up this piece. And that is very important. So if I give it to the prefab department that they have to extrude these pieces, they know exactly how many parts go into everything. This is the piece I talked about yesterday with many of you about cracking. So we have been successful at this piece, but we do have a lot of cracking in the joined side table, the one on the left. And you can see the rendering and how it's made. I'm really excited to move beyond the tube because, as many of you probably work within a series of works, I'm really excited to move beyond the tube. I feel like I've exercised it enough. Now it's time to see where it can go from here. That's my son. He was probably 5 there, but he's always so excited to come in the studio and measure things. And I don't know what he's holding, like a little rubber something, just to see the scale of the pieces. Now I'm going to get into a little nitty gritty, some like logistics. So, it's not just all fun and game in the studio and like photographing work, and just to show you guys like what we do, we're actually going to a trade show coming up. And in order to apply for the trade show and to know what we are bringing to the trade show, we have to make a rendering of our booth, right? And we have to make sure we're getting the right size booth and know what pieces we're bringing. So this is in SketchUp. And it has the booth next door to us, but it just helps us to know what we're bringing, what colors to bring, to kind of imagine what this will be. I guess you can see a little bit of this, but a big part of our work at the studio is making sure there are assets for the team to have information, that no one person holds all the information. Anything from a sales process to a kiln process to a shipping and receiving or a production process. That means everything has to be written down, okay? That everything can be accessible. So this, we call this the baseball cards. And every single piece that is in our line sheet has a baseball card that says the dimensions of it when it's wet and the dimensions of it when it's final, the shrinkage rate. It tells you how many slabs you'll need, how many molds you'll need, and if it's thick or thin, or any of these kinds of parts. And this is a way for our team to know if they have the right parts for the pieces. So those kinds of things are crucial for our team. We are constantly correcting these because they are mutable. They're laminated pieces of paper. So it's really important to be open to that process as well. We also use, I don't know if you can see it, we also use something called Salesforce. It's called a CRM system. It's a customer relation management system, which has changed our lives as well. We have different product segments that we sell with and different processes within that. So this is part of our sales opportunities. So we have 4 different sections on our Salesforce, which is like custom product requests, product orders, product questions, and quote requests. And within that, we have chains in which the information goes. So first we have a quote, then we have it under review, and it goes down the line. It can move. These kinds of systems are incredible if you ever get into a more robust sales process. These are, they can be used for they're big tech things, but they can actually be used for micro manufacturing as well. It's really amazing. Okay, this stuff I don't think you could see, so now I'm gonna go to the website. So I'm gonna show you a little bit behind the scenes of, like, this is a typical view of our orders. So we only have certain people accessing this spreadsheet. It's only the leads in the department. And we have different drop-down menus of where the order is and what process. It could be in production, drying, bisque, in stock, glaze, all these kinds of things. We made all this stuff up. This is not something like we went to a business school and we're like, because there's no software out there that's like marketing to ceramic. You're like literally taking manufacturing tools. This is in Google Doc. And so we have different sections. We have a ready to ship section. We have ready for inspection, which is the QC department. And then we have orders. And we're all the way, look at this. We are all the way out until, God knows when. We're out till June already. Get September orders. So, and as orders get finished, you can drop down this menu and change it to any of these icons. Now, this is a way for our whole departments to talk to each other. So it's a way for the fabrication team to speak to the glaze department. So they know it's drying. Okay, they can go over the shelf, see it's drying, how many days, and they'll change it to in the bisque, which helps the sales department to tell the client when it's going to be done. So these kind of communication tools are really important. We've only developed them through working the business. That's what I'll say about this. And it's a way, and these things move constantly. So all of our orders have abbreviations, all of our works. It's important to label them in a way that helps you know what, so everyone has a common language and stuff like that. Another thing we have here is called our production schedule. So I still have control of the production schedule, as we say. I would love to hire someone to take this over, but we're not quite there yet. So every worker has their own column. So you can see Nacho's first, then we have Carlin, and then we have, yada, 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 other people. But you can see, like today, Nacho is working on a double tier cloud side table, and it's IP, it's in progress. So that helps him, and he can just change this, and he can leave me notes, he can tag me, Google Docs is amazing. And we have his schedule out until, July. Even though I know we have orders till September, we don't want to make the schedule too far out because it changes so much. So this is also a way for him and the whole team to know when they have time off. We have 5 people in the large department, and then we have 2 people in the smalls department, and they only work on smalls, tabletop wares. And that's new for us. The woman who's in charge of the smalls department, she used to be the lead of the prefab. So I was really proud of having her move as the lead of one department and now take over a higher level department, which is, I love to hire and bring from within. At the same time, we have something called the pre-production schedule, which is all the parts in which the team needs to make in order for the fabricators to do that. So we have stuff like that. So I know it's not very sexy or anything, but it is my constant world of thinking about these different parts. And I'll just leave you with an image of my family because it's important. That's what grounds me. And that's my husband, and he's not an artist. aerospace guy, and my son who's 7, you know, if I didn't have them, I would literally work 7 days a week till like 3 in the morning and just be a crazy person. So, you know, it's very important for me to have them to ground me in that kind of way, especially when you have a dual practice with lots of things happening. So I'll leave you with that. I know it's a very long lecture, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.